Monday night, y'all. So this week's going to be so big. We've got quite a few things on the books. Thursday night, we have a VIP called Surviving to Thriving. So it's going to be a mom event. You guys are going to hop on. We're going to encourage the pants off. Well, we'll keep your pants on. We're going to encourage the happiness out of you and your potentials on Thursday night. Tomorrow, we have our coaching with Preston, 2 hours of complete and total mindset shifts. It's going to be great. And the best thing this week is happening right now. And for those of you guys who are on, you guys are going to be blessed. And here's why. When you have the right captains sailing the ship that you're committing your reputation to, it makes all the difference. So we know that Charles makes decisions with 12 steps thought of ahead. He's incredible. Alec has the heart of literally, I think of him as like a dad, a mentor, a friend, a confidant, all those things. And then Genevieve has the spirit and the commitment and the knowledge to be able to help us to train our teams and to train yourselves to be the very best representation for Plexus and for you to have the success that you dream of. So tonight, the forum is just Q&A, but Genevieve's going to go ahead and tell us what she does at Plexus, how she ended up there, and then I'm going to drill her for like 15 minutes with super hard ingredient questions.
Well, thank you all for having me on tonight. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be trusted with your team on this call. Thank you so much, Jennifer. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Genevieve. I have been with Plexus for I think roughly 9 months now. I actually live within walking distance of the company. It's like 4.5 miles. And I moved here from Michigan about 3 years ago for another position with a direct selling company. And I used to drive by Plexus all the time. And I was like, what is Plexus? I think I have a friend from a long time ago that did Plexus. And it was before they built the big building. And so I would drive and see all these different Plexus buildings. And so I looked it up. Yes, a girls' trip to my house. Next time y'all are in town, we can sit on the pillows that are not, my kids will be so embarrassed. They're like, how did you not check your set? I'm like, well. So let me know if the bobcat walks by, because we do have bobcats in the backyard. So we moved to Michigan over 3 years ago for another role. And I had just been following Plexus, because like it was just in my backyard. And I fell in love with the founders of this company. I'm not going to lie. I fell in love with Charles and Alec's vision to do network marketing like it could be done, but rarely was done. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was when I Googled and would see some of the posts from y'all, I was like, wow, this is really a special kind of people. And you know how like you just kind of stumble into people and you're like, those are my people. So I was like, oh, they don't know it yet, but I need to work for this company. And so I may or may not have stalked LinkedIn for a while looking for open roles. And I finally came to find out there was an open position. And then I just went into my network and I was like, who knows someone at Plexus? Who knows someone at Plexus? And so through a couple of connections, a few friends made some recommendations. And after quite a long time, I think it took them like 90 days, maybe a little longer, to finally pull the trigger on hiring me. And I am so grateful they did, because not only is the culture fantastic, but the products have made such a big difference in our life. You guys, like my shoes don't even fit anymore. I don't know if you had that happen, because you know how your feet get bigger with every pregnancy. I don't know if it happened to you, but it did to me. And then now all of a sudden my shoes are falling off, my pants are falling off. Like, you need a new wardrobe budget. I should have factored that in when I worked on my compensation plan, because it's just such a good feeling to feel good. And I have to tell you, I'm going to brag a little bit and then I'll stop talking, Jennifer. I actually have so much energy right now. I'm running. I ran 11 miles this weekend. Ask me. Yeah, I know. Hello, Amy. right? I was like, I never in a million years even liked running. I liked like class exercises and stuff, but I never felt like I had enough energy to like move. Like when you run, both feet actually have to be off the ground. That's the difference between running and walking. And I was like, I don't have like enough momentum to make that happen. But these products have made a difference in our life and our families. And I'm like, I'm all energetic and stuff. So I'm loving it.
I feel like maybe potentially a bobcat might have been chasing you. That's what I'm thinking.
That's why you have to run around here. You got to run from the bobcats.
And wait till June or July when it's 119 degrees.
I have been there. It's you guys, it's true what they say. It's a dry heat. So it beats like humidity any day. And I do want you to know that I have been where you are. I actually come from a learning and development background. So for most of my life professionally, I have studied psychology, I've studied sales, I have studied corporate training, how people perform, why they perform, all that kind of good stuff. And I had built my own network marketing business, starting from scratch, just like where you are, not wanting to do it as a business and growing an over $2 million annual business in terms of sales. So listen, so I have been in your shoes. I know what it's like. And I really believe in the power of the business. I really believe in the power of the business because it changed our family's life. So that's me. And I have 4 kids. 2 of them live out of the house, and 2 of them still live in the house. So.
And they are YouTube famous, y'all. Like, kids are YouTube famous. I'll have to tell you guys who to go follow so you can see what they do. My kids will watch them, and then they'll try to recreate the videos, and I'm like, please stop. Like, don't.
Do they? Do they do the granny ones? Kids like the granny videos a lot, and they're like,
Well, YouTube is just a beast of its own. I'd love to be able to tap into that. But I love that your kids are out there making a difference, but doing it with character. I love that. And I think that about you. So we have some questions for you. And some of them I think are really interesting because I wonder what you think about this. Do you see that some of the sales techniques have to shift depending on the area of the country that you're in? Like West Coast or up north? Do you see that?
No. Next question.
And that's interesting because a lot of people will say, I'm in the north and people are more.
I know. And can I just explain that, y'all? I have been inside the corporate world for, I want to say 10, 15 years. And every company I've worked for, every section of the country and every company I've worked for is like, oh, we have to do it different here because. And I will tell you the only reason I don't believe that to be true is because people buy in exactly the same emotional pattern. It's not different based on whether you're from the Northeast or the South or what have you. Now, what may change is how valuable people see one-to-one relationships or in-person relationships. Like, I think there's certain parts of the country where people value social a lot more than other places, but the mechanisms are exactly the same. You can use the same tools. I have not seen any hard and fast evidence. Like every time I've worked with a group in a different part of the country, I've never had to adjust the system for where they live. So is that popular or not popular? Is this like a thing where like you push a button and then I'm like, and then I'm gone from the screen?
You go through the secret like hole in the ground. Well, honestly, here's how I see all of that. And this is not meant to be ugly. I just think, and this is what we all do, I do it, everyone does it. Excuses make it easier for us to accept if there's maybe a time you feel stuck or maybe you feel rejected. And the only difference I see is you might say, yo, 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 versus hey, y'all, or something.
Hey,
I don't know. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Different entrance, or like it might be like, how you doing, like the Canadians. All right, so here we go. It says, I'm having a really hard time closing with my potentials, and I feel like I'm pressuring them. What's the best way to close without pressuring? So maybe just a question about closing. What does that look like?
Yes. So, okay, here's what you need to know. And a close is always earned. You have to earn a close. That's the first thing that a lot of people misunderstand. So if you have done several steps, first of all, the first step is I know I've identified a need that you might have. So y'all, when you look at that leads list that we brought out in Super Saturday, it's identified by needs. And a lot of people want to skip that step. They're like, well, I don't want to think through what they might possibly need Plexus for. I want to just call them about Plexus. Well, you're kind of skipping the step that's like, it is so important. 80% of the sale cycle is relational. 80%, 80 to 85% of the time you spend talking about Plexus to someone is relational. So when you try to skip steps or you try to close too early, that's when it's going to feel kind of slimy. So you have to ask yourself, did I earn the close? The first thing is, I've identified a problem. The second thing is, oh my gosh, they have to see the problem too. I love this field, but my heart goes out to all those people who are like, how do you get someone to see that they need Plexus? I'm like, you don't get them to see they need Plexus. They have to see that they need Plexus, right? And so that is, and if you weren't on our call with your awesome leader, you'll want to listen to the recording because we talked about this pipeline, right? So you absolutely positively need to know what the need is. You have to identify the need. They have to, by the way, move from I've identified my problem to I'm ready to do something about it. So that's another step that has to happen. So if they're still at like, yeah, I'm not sleeping well, but I don't care. They have not moved to need for change. Does that make sense? So you've got to help move them along to like, so do you see a reason to make a change? So when we ask the question in the send, share, invite, like, what did you think about what you saw? You're checking for those things. You're checking for, did they identify with anything in that video? And then that's your point of leverage in terms of like, yeah, what did you think about that? So if we could potentially show you a similar path, would that be something that you're open to exploring, right? That's why those questions are more important than information, because you're checking. And so once there's a need for change and you've actually presented, like, here's a potential solution, right? Then you've earned the right to ask for the close. And in that particular case, you really do have a sense, and it's totally okay to say, so based on what we've discussed so far, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? And if they say anything that even remotely indicates how they're feeling, you know where they stand. But here's a little tip for you. You can always say, so I like to ask this question because I like for people to drive the conversation themselves, right? I always like to put my prospect in the driver's seat. So it's like, I'm going to ask you, you get to drive this whole thing on a scale of 1 to 5, right? 5 being you actually enrolled while we were talking from your phone, and 1 being you're going to the courthouse to get that restraining order. Where do you feel like we are in this conversation? And they'll tell you, right? Anything above a 2, you try to close. Y'all, you say, well, it sounds like you might be open to taking your first step. What are your thoughts about just getting started? But you can't say that, right, until you've done all of those other steps first. And that's often where people feel like it feels weird. It feels slimy. So if it feels weird, if it feels slimy, chances are pretty good it is. So just trust your little instincts and go, okay, what did I actually supply enough value? Did I actually create enough trust? And if not, then just go back and do that over time.
Which is where the cold messaging, I mean, part of it is bravery. It's like, I'm going to make sure everybody hears about Plexus. But the other part is you still have to follow those steps.
Yes.
I like that a lot. And I like basically asking what resonated with them. And maybe even saying, like, the part that they talked about not being able to pay their bills touched me. What part touched you? Because you can't.
Right. Yep. Yep. And so when we talk about calling people cold, are we talking about people we know and we just haven't talked to yet? Or are we talking about people we don't know? I'm just curious.
Well, my understanding is people are going through friends of friends on social media and just sending messages like, hey, I see you're friends with Maria. She's one of my friends. Have you heard about Plexus? And getting it started.
Oh, well, if that's working out for you, you know, good for you, honestly and truly. That is definitely a cold call. And what you need to know about cold calls is that they have a much lower, right? A much lower yes to no, or much higher. Like if it's three no's, if it's 6 to 7 no's to get a yes, cold calling is more like 20 no's to get a yes. It's like it's much higher because people buy from people they know, from people they like, and people they trust. And that's generally not something that happens in a cold market. And I would just say, and I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but y'all invite me on the call, so I'm just going to give you your money's worth. I would be very careful about connecting with people who are friends of friends without that friend's permission or knowing, because it might get back to them that, like, hey, your buddy Jennifer is like spamming us, and that could backfire against you. So I just would be very careful. Now, what I would do though is I would just call your friends and ask them to give you referrals. I would absolutely positively do those sorts of calls where it's like, hey, Jennifer, you know, I just wanted to connect with you. You're a businesswoman. Or, hey, I wanted to connect with you. You've got this really amazing circle of friends who potentially could benefit from what I'm doing. But that's hard because if she's not a customer or a client, it's just really tough. What I would coach you to do is to connect in your own network in a cold way. I think if you're brave enough to call people that you don't know, you are way brave enough to call people in your network and just say, hey, Maria, I know we haven't talked about Plexus before, but I'm just shaking it up today because I'm feeling like everybody I know needs to try a sample. You know, have you been following me along at all? Have you been paying attention? Today is your lucky day. I'm sending out samples. I mean, or just simply, it's totally okay to, like, hey, Beth, this is Genevieve. We haven't connected in a while, right? We're typing this out. Couldn't help but wonder how you're feeling these days. And, you know, if you would be open to trying a free sample. Now, I'm going to just keep talking for a second. So I want to share a story with you because I always apply the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I want you to think about if every one of your friends in their social media connected with everybody else's friends about what they were selling, how many cold connections you might be getting and how that might feel to you. I had a friend recently connect with me and like, hey, it's the last day of the month. I'm running a special. Would it be okay if I just used your name for a promotion on my team? We're running a contest, whatever. So I know the drill. I've done this before. And I'm like, okay, go ahead and use me. Like, I'm like, okay, you can put me down as a yes or a no or whatever it is you're counting. The next thing I know, ding, you have been signed up to, Acme Network Marketing. Here's your account. And I'm like, that heifer signed me up for her team. Like, I cannot even believe that. And so now every time she posts, I'm like, oh yeah, now I remember you, right? You didn't give me the courtesy of the truth. I'm trying to get some light here. You didn't give me the courtesy of the truth and So you have to be careful. I'm just saying. Am I allowed to say that? Maybe that's not the answer y'all wanted to hear, but so call your own friends. Get your 3 no's a day and you will be fine. If your friend has people in their network that you want to meet, then friend them and say, hey, we're both friends of Jennifer. I noticed that you're a homeschooler too. I wondered if I could add you to my network. And then get to know them and see if you can serve them first.
I think that's key. I mean, that is actually really beautiful because so many of us, especially when this started to rev up, not just Plexus, but all network marketing, we all kind of felt the same feeling of how many groups am I going to get put in today? Like how many leggings parties am I going to be in? All of those questions. And some people got a bad taste in their mouth. And that's the last thing we want them to think of when they think of Plexus. But that's not to say that you can't start a friendship with someone.
That's right.
And eventually, if you're posting well, if you are trustworthy, it's going to come up.
That's right.
Perfect.
That's right. Do that instead.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you maybe one more, depending on the time. I don't want to keep you. You deserve to have dinner with your husband.
I am good.
Isn't she sweet for doing this for us? It's 6:30 there. It's dinner time.
My kids are at home. It's all good. You're good.
When you're having a tough day and you know what you need to do, but you just don't feel motivated to get going, do you have a way that you overcome that? Is
yes.
Something you like? Oh, yes. She said yes. Tell me.
Yes. Ladies, there is something that you really want to be doing every single day. So when you're feeling that way, what you have to do is just get your mind into a creative state. You just do. You have to change you can't work in that state. So I will tell you, and I do this, is I spend a half an hour every day listening to something that's going to make me better at my job. So whether it's a podcast, whether you're re-listening to a Plexus training, I'm sure that Jennifer has a huge library of trainings that you can listen to as well. 30 minutes a day. And here's the thing, you listen to the same thing all week long because it takes about 7 times before you're going to actually get it. So you don't sit down with a notebook and start writing notes. It's like I do it, and I'm not kidding, I do it from my phone while I'm getting ready in the morning. So I'll start a podcast and I'll just listen to it while I am, like Les Brown would be good, right? While I'm getting ready, they have wireless speakers for the shower. I'm all listening. Because you know what? You're just in your own head anyway. And what I want is that one good idea that's going to shift me into, oh, I got to try that mode. So that's one thing that I do. The other thing that I do, Brene Brown, I love her. The other thing that I do is I apply the 5-minute rule. So you can suffer through anything for 5 minutes. And so I tell myself, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. And I set my timer. And I give myself permission to stop after 5 minutes if I don't feel like continuing. So let me tell you, that works great with your teams, by the way. You're like, listen, let's just suffer through it for 5 minutes. Let's set the timer, set your timer, hang up, and start. Call me back in 5 minutes if you don't feel like doing this anymore. They never call you back. You know why? Because it's the starting that's the problem. It's the starting that's the problem, not the doing. Yes, I listen to the same podcast every day for a week. I'll listen to that same thing until I can almost recite it in my head because I'm like, oh, this is when they're going to talk about this, or this is we're going to talk about this, So that's what I do.
I literally am going to be your best friend. This is happening. I feel it.
We're going to be so cool with our red hair together, both of us. We're going to be like twins. We look so much alike.
It's true. It's the glasses. So first of all, I think everyone, including diamonds, struggle with that, getting over that starting. It's just hard. In every area. I have to make dinner. But once you get started, you kind of pick up momentum. I like that a lot.
The other thing, I will just say this really quick. The other thing that helps is if you work in the same spot every single day. So even if it's a card table, if all you do is work in that spot, every time you sit there, your brain will get it's kind of like the same thing with exercise. Nobody goes all the way to the gym and then goes, oh, I don't think I'm going to exercise, right? It's getting to the gym that's the problem. But once you're there, your body goes, oh, yeah, gym, we're exercising. We're not bowling, right? We're not eating popcorn here. We are exercising. And so I really do have, I'm not kidding, I could go get it if you don't believe me, but I have a crystal glass that I use when I work for my iced tea. I only drink from that glass when I'm working. I have a place that I sit only when I'm working. And so I go through a little bit of a routine. Y'all are mamas, you know how this works, right? I go through my little routine, and then by the time I sit down, my body goes, oh, we're going to work. And then it does help to do that.
It sounds like habit, and it doesn't, have you always had that discipline, or did you learn this along the way?
Oh, it was one of my many podcasts. No, absolutely. I am the least disciplined person in the world.
Well, it just proves that anybody can learn how to do
it. Does. Just anybody. If I can learn it, you can learn it.
If Genevieve can learn it, then you definitely can learn it.
And I used to always say that. I'm like, I'm the poster child. Look at me. I can't even put my chairs in order on my patio. So, no, I'm not a disciplined person.
Honestly. We're going to totally come down there. We're going to plan a retreat to Scottsdale and kind of do what Amy Kay did. So that's going to be really fun. Yeah, I know. Just not in June or July. I threw up in an Uber from heat exhaustion when I was there.
Oh.
Sorry for too much details. Alita was there. She can tell you about it. Last question.
Yes.
Retention. How do you keep customers or ambassadors, especially, and I'm combining two questions, and maybe you have something to say to this. When you know someone's not being consistent on the products, but they say, well, those don't work. How do you steer that? Just retention in general. Do you have any tips for the retention?
Yeah. So the first thing is you have to invite people to the right seats on the bus. So that's the first thing, right? So if you think about your business as a big rowboat, right? I said bus, but rowboat, right? And you only have a certain number of seats. You have to put the right people in the right places on your rowboat. So if I invite y'all to be passengers on my rowboat, because I made it sound so simple, all you have to do is anytime you start with all you have to do, you have attracted a completely different group of people than the worker bees. Just FYI. Okay? I'm just laying it out there. The answer can't be all you have to do. Does that make sense? Right? It's work, y'all. It's worthwhile work, but it is work. So if I'm asking people, all you have to do is sit on the boat. All you have to do is sit on the boat. And then I wonder why it is so hard for me to get anywhere in my boat, right? Well, how many people are rowing? Everybody else I invited along for the ride. Does that make sense? And so I'm going to be so tired, and I'm going to be like, this Plexus, it is so hard. Oh my gosh. All I'm doing, I have all these people and all they want to do is just sit in my boat. It's well, that's kind of what you signed them up for. It was all you have to do is just put your little fanny on the bench, right? So that's one thing. Make sure you're inviting people in. Even if you're hey, I don't know if this is a fit for you or not, but if you would just be willing to paddle with me one stroke an hour, we'll actually get somewhere together. Does that make sense? Then I'm going to attract someone that's willing to do a little bit of work. So it starts with, yes, riders, not rowers. Rowers, not riders. You have to decide. So when I bring people in, if I'm oh, it's super simple, and then they get their stuff, and you're well, you got to take this in the morning, you got to take 5 of these in the afternoon, and then you got to do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around, and then you got to drink this, and then you got to do that, and then everybody's oh, you know what we want? We want a list from the company of how to, and it's a big scroll. This is what you have to take to be a part of Plexus, right? you're going to have trouble. So you've got to meet people where they are. So how committed are you? So if I tell you that you're going to need to take like 2 supplements and drink this really yummy thing once a day, is that something that you would sign up for? Does that make sense? If I told you that it's like gardening, it's like weed, you got to weed out the bad stuff, you got to seed some good stuff, right? You got to plant, you got to water, right? And a garden doesn't grow in like a day or a month. It takes time. So would you be willing to do that and create a habit over time so that you fall back in love with the way you feel in your body? Does that make sense? Right? You got to cast a vision that the work is so worth it. So you got to cast that vision so that you're not, so if you have to convince someone to sign up, you got to convince them to take their products. And like now you're in a convincing business. So you want to look for people that are like, listen, it takes a little bit of time to get used to doing this. So when people say, honestly and truly, now I am a little bit more like Jennifer. Like I'm a pretty straight shooter. So if somebody calls me and goes, I don't think it's working, I'll be like, well, let's break it down. What do you got going on? Because you know what? It's like a recipe. Quantity and order matters. How much are you taking and when are you taking it? Right? Well, I'm drinking my Slim like when I remember. And you're like, oh, well, that's the problem right there. Look at the directions. Does it say take it when you feel? No, it does not say that. It says like twice a day, right? So what, like put a little timer on, like put a little timer, right? You got to just help them. Like how, you guys, you all have tricks. Like put some things by your bathroom sink. Take it when you brush your teeth, right? Put some things by your nightstand. Take that. Like I've got stuff in my purse because I take it to work, Hey, before you go to bed, like where's the plate? Like put it by your toothbrush because you're going to take it before you go to bed. Like you can help them through that, but be sure you're not selling people more work than they're open to. Are you picking up what I'm laying down? And then the other thing is get them on that welcome to Plexus call, because what we're trying to talk to them about is the fact that you need some consistency. So we can be your third party resource where we're like, y'all, you got to commit to 90 days. Like you got to commit to using our products over time. That's how this works. And then put them in your groups and then start showering them with testimonies, and create testimonies where people are like, I figured out how to take these every day. You know what I mean? Like you got to start telling stories about the things people are struggling with. So does that help? Is that helpful?
Amazing. And they want to know, when is the Welcome to Plexus call? It's every week on Thursday?
It's actually, there is a calendar now on the Ambassador community page. That's the best place to check. We have them on the weekday closest to the 1st and the 15th. Sometimes the 1st is on like Sunday, so it would be on a Monday. And so it wiggles a little bit, but definitely the 1st and definitely the middle of the month. And then we have a recording coming out. So you can send that record, and you do want to send the recording to people, and you want to be like, hey, so excited to be on this journey with you. I want to ensure that you know how to maximize your ambassador benefits. I want to ensure that you know how to maximize your ambassador benefits. Here's this fun little call you're going to want to get on to ensure that you're maximizing your ambassador benefits. I'll call you in 2 days. Do you think you'll have time to watch it? I'll call you in like 2 days.
So good. I mean, that's basically well-rounded. We're talking about how to overcome lack of motivation, how to keep people loving their products, how to build a warm market from a cold market. I mean, it's basically the entire picture of what you're doing with your business. And a couple tips: if someone calls it like Mega Factor or BioCleanse 5, they haven't been using their products, right? There's your little hint right there. All right, let's close this out with your all-time favorite quote. Can you think of one that just?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it's the one I shared this week. My favorite quote is, Man's greatest tragedy isn't that he lost, it's that he almost won. And so many people are focused on the losing, and they have no idea how close they are to winning. You are always so much closer to winning than losing. And so just keep at it.
Mic drop. That was beautiful. And guys, anything that Genevieve is endorsing or doing, and when you look at the calendar, you'll see what that is. You absolutely can feel confident plugging your teams into that, knowing that they'll walk away inspired but educated too, which is so important to marry those two things. I bet you guys all agree with that. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you soon.
I appreciate y'all. Bye-bye.